The encounter. The deep, endless silence of space stretched around the colony ship Dauntless. Commander Jack Riker stood by the observation window, staring at the stars. Space was supposed to feel peaceful, but tonight it felt wrong. There was a whisper in the air, a feeling that something unseen watched them. "Commander," came Lieutenant Davis's voice from the control deck. "We picked up a distress signal. It's old, very old." Jack turned, his heart tightening. Distress signals were rare these days. The galaxy was dangerous, and old signals often led to bad places. "Where's it coming from?" he asked. Davis hesitated. "Velthura, sir. The Forbidden Zone." The name made the room go still. Velthura was a dead world, destroyed by the Syndicate, the alien empire that had enslaved countless worlds. No one had dared visit it for decades. Jack clenched his jaw. "Play the message." Static crackled through the speakers. Then came a faint voice, shaky and broken. "Help. They come. The chains. Breaking. Please." A woman's voice. Desperate. Afraid. Jack made his decision. "Prep the landing team. We check it out." The shuttle cut through thick, gray clouds as it descended into Velthura's atmosphere. Jack Davis and 2 security officers sat in silence, weapons ready. The planet below was dark, its surface scared and broken like a wound that never healed. As they landed, ash swirled through the air like ghosts. Towering black ruins loomed around them. The Syndicate had once ruled from this city, feeding on the power of the enslaved. Davis shivered. "Feels like death here." Jack nodded. "Stay sharp." Their boots crunched on cracked stone as they followed the signal's coordinates. The device led them to a half-buried structure. Its metal walls were covered in strange symbols that pulsed with faint blue light. "In here," Jack said. Inside, the air was cold and thick with the scent of rust. In the center of the chamber stood a glass pod. Frost covered its surface. Behind the glass, a figure lay still, a woman with silver skin and dark hair floating around her head. Davis gasped. "Sir, that's a Valkyrie." Jack's pulse quickened. The Valkyrie were a mysterious race with psionic powers. The Syndicate had hunted them to near extinction, fearing their abilities. The woman's wrists and ankles were bound by glowing metal cuffs. Chains of energy wrapped around her body, crackling with blue sparks. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She was alive. "Help me break the pod," Jack ordered. They worked fast. Jack pried open a control panel and cut the power. With a hiss, the glass slid back. The woman's eyes shot open, brilliant blue orbs that glowed like twin stars. She gasped and tried to sit up, but the chains held her. They're coming." She cried in a shaky voice. "You don't understand. You've triggered the alarm." Jack knelt beside her. "Who's coming?" "Who are you?" "I am Lyra," she whispered. "The Syndicate's hunters. They'll be here soon." The floor trembled. Outside, a low, humming noise filled the air. Jack didn't hesitate. "Davis, cut the chains. Now." Davis fired his plasma cutter at the glowing shackles. The chains resisted at first, but then shattered with a sharp crack. As the last chain broke, Lyra gasped and collapsed into Jack's arms. The humming grew louder. From the shadows of the ruin, sleek, insect-like machines emerged. Their metal legs clicked on the stone as glowing red sensors locked onto the humans. "Syndicate drones," Davis shouted, raising his rifle. "Fall back," Jack ordered, carrying Lyra toward the exit. The drones fired red energy bolts. Stone shattered around them. Davis and the guards laid down covering fire, but the drones kept advancing. Jack sprinted toward the shuttle, feeling Lyra shiver in his arms. "We can't let them take me," she whispered. "They'll never stop." "We won't," Jack said. The shuttle loomed ahead, but the drones were closing fast. One leaped onto the hull, trying to tear through the metal. Jack reached the ramp and set Lyra down. "Take cover," he yelled. He turned, fired his rifle, and hit the drone squarely in its red sensor. It screeched and fell burning to the ground. "Davis, get us out of here," Jack shouted as he dragged Lyra aboard. The shuttle roared to life. The ramp closed just as more drones swarmed from the ruins. The engines blasted fire, scorching the ground as they shot into the sky. Inside the cabin, Jack knelt beside Lyra. Her skin was cold, her breathing rapid. "Stay with me," he said. Her glowing eyes opened slightly. "The Syndicate, they will follow us. They want me back." "Why?" Jack asked. She shivered and whispered, "Because I know their greatest secret." Jack's heart pounded. If she was right, this wasn't just a rescue. This was war. The shuttle soared into the blackness of space, but far below, something stirred. The ruins of Velthera trembled as massive Syndicate warships rose from hidden caverns, their weapons locking onto the fleeing humans. The hunt had begun. The chase. The shuttle raced through the atmosphere, leaving behind the haunted ruins of Velthera. Commander Jack Riker stood at the controls, his jaw clenched as alarms blared across the cabin. Outside the window, Syndicate drones swarmed like metal vultures, red sensors glowing with deadly intent. "Status," Jack barked. Lieutenant Davis's fingers flew across the console. 2 enemy warships closing in. They're charging weapons. Jack swore under his breath. Evasive maneuvers. Full burn. He glanced at the unconscious alien woman strapped into the seat behind him. Lyra. The name lingered in his mind like a whisper from a forgotten dream. She wasn't just an alien. She was Thalkiri, one of the most mysterious species humanity had ever encountered. And she was terrified. The Syndicate wanted her back, and when the Syndicate wanted someone, they never stopped. "Brace," Davis shouted. The ship lurched as a plasma blast seared past them, scorching the shuttle's hull. Jack gripped the controls, forcing the shuttle into a sharp dive. The gravity harness groaned under the strain. Lyra stirred, her glowing blue eyes fluttering open. She gasped, sitting up with a jolt. "They're here," she whispered. "I can feel them." Jack's heart skipped. "Feel them? What do you mean?" Her eyes darted toward the window. "The hunters. Their minds, their hunger. They won't stop until they catch me." The shuttle shook as another blast struck their shields. Warning lights flashed red. Davis cursed. "Shields at 20%. We can't outrun them, Commander." Jack's mind raced. The Syndicate warships were faster and better armed. Running was pointless. Fighting was suicide. They needed a different approach. "Lyra," he said, turning to her. "Can you sense them? Their minds?" She nodded shakily. "Yes. The drones. They're controlled by a central mind. A pilot on the warship. Can you confuse them?" Her face twisted with fear. I don't know. The chains. They blocked my power for so long. My mind feels weak." "You don't have to stop them. Just give us a few seconds." Lyra squeezed her eyes shut and took a deep breath. The air grew cold. Her silver skin seemed to shimmer. Outside, the drones wobbled mid-flight, their sleek forms jerking as if caught in invisible strings. "Now, Davis," Jack shouted. The lieutenant hit the throttle. The shuttle shot forward, leaving the disoriented drones spinning in place. The Syndicate warships fired blindly, but missed as the human ship veered toward the thick asteroid belt surrounding the planet. Lyra slumped in her seat, breathing heavily. Jack steadied her with one hand. "You did great," he said softly. She gave a weak nod. "They're angry now. They'll come harder." The words chilled him. The Syndicate never took failure lightly. The Dauntless appeared as a gleaming spear against the blackness of space. As the shuttle docked, the crew rushed to secure it. "Commander," said Officer Patel as Jack stepped out, supporting Lyra, "we detected Syndicate signatures on long-range sensors. They're tracking you." "No surprise," Jack said grimly. "Prep for immediate jump to the outer colonies." Patel nodded and ran off. Jack guided Lyra through the corridors. The crew stared. Many had never seen a Valkyrie before. Rumors would spread fast. They reached the medbay, where Dr. Hughes examined Lyra. "Her body is fine," Hughes said after scanning her. "But her brain activity, it's like a storm. Psionic energy, off the charts." "I am losing control," Lyra whispered. "The chains kept my power locked away for years. Now, it's wild." Jack knelt beside her. "We'll help you, but we need answers. Why does the Syndicate want you so badly?" Her eyes darkened. "Because I know how to break them." Jack exchanged a look with Hughes. "Break them how?" Lyra shuddered. "The Syndicate doesn't just control planets with ships and weapons. They use the mind engine, a massive psionic network that enslaves entire populations. It bends thoughts, erases resistance. My people, the Valkyrie, were immune. So the Syndicate hunted us." Her voice cracked. "I'm the last with the knowledge to destroy the mind engine. If I can reach it, I can free the Syndicate's slaves. Billions of lives. But if they capture me, they'll use my mind to make the engine unstoppable." Jack sat back, the weight of her words sinking in. The Syndicate had terrorized humanity for decades, enslaving or annihilating weaker species. If Lyra could shatter that control, the galaxy might finally break free. "If you can stop them," Jack said, "then we'll get you there." Suddenly, alarms blared. "Commander Riker to the bridge." Patel's voice crackled through the comm. Jack sprinted to the bridge, Lyra close behind. "Report," he snapped. Patel pointed to the holo display. "2 Syndicate dreadnoughts just dropped out of warp. They're blocking every exit, and they sent a message." The screen flickered, revealing a tall, insect-like figure with gleaming black armor and burning red eyes. Jack's stomach twisted. Overlord Kalis, the Syndicate's top enforcer. "Humans of the Dauntless," Kalis said, his voice like metal scraping glass. "You have taken something that belongs to us. Surrender the Valkyrie now, and we will grant your crew mercy." Jack felt every eye on him. The weight of the choice crushed his chest. Lyra stepped beside him, trembling but resolute. "Don't believe him," she whispered. "They never give mercy." Jack's mind raced. Fight or run. Surrender or resist. Then Kalis leaned closer to the camera. "You have 1 hour to comply, or we will tear your ship apart, piece by piece." The transmission cut. Silence filled the bridge. Jack gripped the rail, his eyes locked on the Syndicate warships that loomed like twin predators. "We won't surrender," he said, voice hard as steel. "We'll find a way through." Lyra's hand brushed his arm. "The Syndicate always thinks humans will break," she whispered. "They're wrong, aren't they?" Jack gave a grim smile. "Yeah, they're dead wrong." Outside, the Syndicate dreadnoughts charged their weapons. Inside, the crew of the Dauntless prepared for a battle that could change the galaxy forever. The secret of the chains. The Dauntless hovered in the cold void of space, its hull gleaming under the distant light of a pale sun. Across from it, 2 Syndicate dreadnoughts blocked every escape path. Their massive cannons glowed with a sickly crimson light, ready to fire. Time ticked away like a countdown to death. Commander Jack Riker stood on the bridge, his eyes locked on the holo display. Overlord Kalis's message still echoed in his mind. 1 hour to comply. Surrender Lyra, or face destruction. His fists tightened. He wouldn't hand her over. Not after everything they'd learned. If Lyra was right, she was the key to breaking the Syndicate's control over billions of enslaved minds. If she fell into their hands, the galaxy would be doomed. Lyra stood beside him, her silver skin pale and eyes glowing faintly with stress. "They're trying to break me," she whispered. "I can feel their thoughts pressing on mine. The hunters are close, watching." Jack glanced at her. "Can you block them?" "I'm trying, but I haven't used my powers fully since I was a child." "And the chains," Her voice cracked, and she touched her wrists where the glowing shackles had once bound her. The syndicate didn't just trap my body. They'd weakened my mind. Jack placed a steady hand on her shoulder. We'll protect you. We'll fight if we have to. She gave a shaky nod, but fear lingered in her eyes. Commander, Lieutenant Davis called from his station. Enemy ships repositioning. Looks like they're setting up an interdiction field. No warp escape. Jack swore under his breath. The syndicate planned to trap them like prey. He scanned the star map. Their only chance was to break through the blockade. Prep all cannons and charge the engines, Jack ordered. We're punching through their flank. But, sir, Davis hesitated. The dreadnoughts will tear us apart. Not if we move fast enough. Jack turned to Lara. You said the drones are controlled through a psionic network, right? She nodded. Yes. The mind engine relays commands to them through the hunters. Syndicate officers trained to control the network. Can you disrupt their link? Even for a few seconds. Her eyes widened. Maybe. But it will hurt. A lot. Jack gave a grim smile. Hurting them back is worth it. Liara drew a deep breath. Okay. I'll try. The Dauntless surged forward with a sudden burst of speed. The syndicate dreadnoughts responded instantly, firing plasma beams that scorched the ship's shields. The hull groaned under the impact. Liara knelt in the center of the bridge, hands pressed to her temples. Her breathing grew shallow, and her eyes turned into blazing blue suns. There, so many, she whispered. So many minds, connected like a web. And the hunters, they see us. Jack stood over her protectively. Find the center. Find their command mind. Liara clenched her jaw and pushed harder. On the syndicate dreadnought Vraxis, Overlord Kalis sat in his command chair, mandibles clicking with anticipation. The human ship dared to resist. Soon, the Valkyrie would be his. Her power would feed the mind engine, and the syndicate's control would become absolute. Suddenly, the bridge lights flickered. His hunters groaned, clutching their heads. Kalis rose. What is happening? He hissed. Psionic interference. Overlord. An officer rasped. She's pushing into the network. Kalis's eyes narrowed, then pushed back. Liara screamed. Her mind collided with an invisible wall of cold, dark pressure. It was like slamming into an iron gate covered in jagged spikes. The hunters were there, 3 powerful psionic minds, attacking her. You cannot win, came a voice, deep and emotionless. Surrender. She gritted her teeth, channeling every ounce of strength she had left. The chains had weakened her for years, but the fire of her people still burned inside her. No, she spat. I break chains. With a final mental shove, she sent a pulse of raw psychic energy into the enemy network. On the dreadnought Vraxis, control panels exploded. Drone fleets veered wildly, crashing into each other. The psionic network collapsed like a shattered spiderweb. Kalis roared. Full fire. Destroy the human ship. Now, Jack bellowed. Davis activated the thrusters. The Dauntless surged through the chaos, skimming past the dreadnought's bow. Cannons fired along the way, blasting through weakened defenses. The ship shook as syndicate beams grazed the hull, but they broke through. The warp engines roared to life, and the Dauntless vanished into the black. The crew cheered, but Jack rushed to Lyra. Blood trickled from her nose, and her body shook. Lyra, stay with me, he said, voice low. Her eyes fluttered open. We made it. We did, Jack said softly. You did it. She smiled weakly. Told you, humans, break chains. Hours later, the truth revealed. The Dauntless hid in the shadow of a barren moon. The crew worked frantically to repair damage while Jack sat beside Lyra in the medbay. She stirred, eyes opening slowly. They're still searching, she whispered. I can feel them, like cold hands reaching. We'll stay ahead of them, Jack said. But we need to understand the mind engine. How does it work? Liara sat up with effort. The mind engine is buried on Nexus Prime, the Syndicate's command world. It sends psionic commands across star systems, controlling entire populations. The hunters act like living conduits for the signal. How do we destroy it? Her eyes turned cold. The core crystal. A Valkyrie's power can shatter it. But the core is protected by energy barriers. I'll need to get close. Very close. Jack nodded. Then we go to Nexus Prime. We end this. But it's a fortress, Liara said. Kellis will expect us. Jack smiled grimly. Good. Let him. Liara squeezed his hand. You're risking everything. Freedom's worth it, Jack said. Outside, the stars shimmered with quiet promise. Behind them, the Syndicate hunted. Ahead, Nexus Prime waited, a dark heart controlling countless lives. And now, the Dauntless carried the only hope of breaking it forever. The war for freedom had truly begun. The fortress of chains. The Dauntless drifted silently in the shadow of a shattered asteroid, hidden from the Syndicate's long-range scanners. The crew moved with quiet urgency, preparing for a mission that could decide the fate of countless worlds. The Syndicate's mind engine, the tool they used to control entire species, lay hidden deep beneath the surface of Nexus Prime. Commander Jack Riker stood at the holographic map table, his eyes fixed on the glowing outline of the Syndicate stronghold. Beside him, Liara's silver skin reflected the dim light, her glowing blue eyes locked in concentration. So, this is the mind engine's fortress? Jack asked. Liara gave a slow nod. Yes, the Syndicate built it within a mountain on Nexus Prime. Layers of defenses, guarded by drones and hunters. The core crystal is at the center. If we destroy it, the psionic network collapses. Jack rubbed his jaw. And if we fail? Liara's eyes darkened. Then every free world in the Syndicate's reach will fall. Humanity won't just lose. We'll become slaves, like the others. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then we don't fail, Jack said. We go in, break the chains, and get out. The descent. Hours later, a stealth shuttle cut through Nexus Prime's atmosphere, gliding like a shadow through thick clouds. Jack sat in the pilot's seat, his muscles tense. Liara sat beside him, eyes closed as she reached out with her mind. I can feel them, she whispered. The hunters. Their minds are sharp, like blades, but they haven't noticed us yet. The shuttle descended into a canyon carved by ancient rivers. Ahead, a massive black fortress jutted from the mountain like a broken fang. Towering spires crackled with blue lightning, the same energy that once bound Liara in chains. That's the mind engine's power source, she said, voice tight with fear. It's alive. I can feel it pulsing, feeding off millions of minds. Jack guided the shuttle behind a rocky outcrop. We go in on foot from here. They moved through the shadows, navigating sharp rocks and narrow paths. The closer they got to the fortress, the colder the air became. Jack felt the chill seep into his bones. It's not just the temperature, Liara said softly. The mind engine emits psionic pressure. It weakens resistance. It wants us to give up. Jack forced a grin. Humans are stubborn. We don't give up. Liara gave a small smile but said nothing. They reached a hidden maintenance hatch along the fortress's base. Jack used a plasma cutter to carve through the lock. The metal door hissed open, revealing a narrow, dark tunnel. As they slipped inside, the door sealed behind them, trapping them in the cold silence of the enemy stronghold. The labyrinth within. The tunnel twisted downward, carved directly into the rock. Faint, pulsating lights lined the walls, casting eerie shadows. Liara paused, hand pressed against the wall. The crystal is below us, deep. The mind engine core is like a giant heart, pulsing beneath the mountain. Then we go down, Jack said. The tunnel ended at a vertical shaft with a maintenance ladder. Jack went first, descending carefully. The metal was ice-cold beneath his gloves. Liara followed, her breath uneven. Halfway down, Liara gasped. "Wait, stop." Jack froze. "What is it?" "Someone's here. A hunter. He knows we're coming." Before Jack could respond, the lights above turned crimson. An alarm blared through the shaft. "Go," Jack shouted. They slid down the ladder, landing hard on the floor below. The tunnel ahead opened into a vast underground chamber. The mind engine core loomed before them, a colossal crystal suspended above a deep pit, crackling with blue psionic energy. Its surface rippled like liquid glass, reflecting endless, distorted faces of the minds it enslaved. Liara staggered back. So many voices, crying, begging for freedom. Jack steadied her. "Focus. We have to destroy it." She nodded, tears in her eyes. The confrontation. They crossed the chamber toward the control console. Jack placed the explosive charges along the base of the support structure. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Jack turned, weapon raised. From the shadows stepped Overlord Kellis. His insect-like armor gleamed in the blue light. His eyes burned red, and his mandibles clicked with cold amusement. "Ah, the brave human and the fragile Valkyrie," Kellis said. "Did you really think you could hide from us?" Jack fired. The plasma bolt hit a shimmering shield around Kellis and evaporated. Kellis chuckled. "Primitive weapons." His gaze shifted to Lara. "Come, child. You can't fight the mind engine. It was built to conquer minds like yours. Surrender, and the pain will end." Liara clutched her head. He's pressing into my mind." Jack stepped between them. "Stay with me, Liara. Fight him." Kellis raised one clawed hand. Jack flew backward, slamming into the wall. His vision blurred as pain shot through his ribs. Liara collapsed to her knees, trembling. The energy from the mind engine swirled around her, drawing her in. "Feel the power, Liara," Kellis hissed. "You were born to serve us. Your mind will complete the network. Your power will make the syndicate unstoppable." Liara groaned, eyes glowing painfully bright. Jack forced himself to stand. "Liara, listen to me." His voice cracked through the haze. "You're stronger than him. You broke the chains before. You can do it again." Kellis laughed. "She can't resist the engine. Her kind was always weak." Jack locked eyes with Liara. "You're not weak. You're a Valkyrie. Your people resisted the syndicate for generations. You're their last hope. You can break the chains." Liara's breathing slowed. Her hands clenched into fists. Kellis stepped closer. "Submit," he commanded. Liara's eyes snapped open. "No," she said, voice clear and sharp. The mind engine's glow faltered. Kellis recoiled. "Impossible." Liara rose to her feet, her body shimmering with blue energy. The swirling psionic field around the crystal shifted, bending toward her. "I don't break," she said. "I break you." The crystal trembled as Liara extended her arms. Energy coursed between her and the core. Kellis lunged at her. Jack fired, hitting the Overlord's exposed leg. Kellis roared in pain, falling to one knee. "Finish it, Liara," Jack yelled. The shattering. Liara closed her eyes and sent a pulse of power into the mind engine. The crystal screamed. The faces trapped inside it twisted from despair to confusion, and then relief. The surface cracked, and brilliant white light exploded outward. Kellis howled as the energy lashed at him. His shield shattered, and his body convulsed. The fortress shook. The ground split beneath them. "Run," Jack shouted. Liara collapsed into his arms, her energy spent. Jack triggered the explosives as he carried her toward the exit. Behind them, the mind engine exploded in a blinding flash. The crystal disintegrated. The psionic web controlling billions of minds dissolved in an instant. The escape. The mountain crumbled as Jack reached the surface. The shuttle waited nearby, engines hot. Davis waved from the hatch. Get us out of here. Jack roared as he laid Lyra inside. The shuttle launched into the sky. Below, the fortress collapsed into a smoking crater. In the cabin, Jack held Lyra's hand. Her breathing was faint but steady. You did it, he whispered. You broke the chains. Her lips curved into a small, exhausted smile. Told you, humans are stubborn. Jack squeezed her hand as the shuttle raced into space, leaving the shattered heart of the Syndicate behind. But he knew the battle wasn't over. Kahless had escaped, and the Syndicate would come for revenge. The sacrifice. The Dauntless drifted in the shadow of a crimson gas giant, hidden from Syndicate scanners. The crew worked in tense silence, repairing the ship after their daring escape from Nexus Prime. The mind engine was destroyed, its psionic chains broken. Across the galaxy, millions of enslaved minds were waking to freedom. But victory came with a cost. In the medbay, Commander Jack Riker sat beside Lyra's bed. Her skin, once shining like polished silver, was now pale and dull. Her breathing was shallow. The immense psychic effort of shattering the mind engine had drained her life force. Come on, Lyra, Jack whispered. Stay with us. Her eyes fluttered open. The faint blue glow had dimmed. Is it gone? She asked. Jack managed a smile. Yeah, the mind engine's gone. You did it. Billions are free because of you. Her lips twitched in a weak smile. Good. I felt them when the crystal broke. Their fear turning into hope. Her gaze darkened. But I still feel something else. The Syndicate isn't done. Jack's stomach tightened. Kahless. Lyra gave a slow nod. He's not broken. I felt his mind slip away when the core shattered. He escaped. Jack rose and paced the room. The Syndicate had lost its greatest weapon, but its overlord still lived, and Kahless would come for revenge. He'd want Lyra back, or dead. The comm unit crackled. Commander Riker, report to the bridge. Priority message. Jack squeezed Lyra's hand. Rest. I'll handle this. She held his fingers for a moment. Be careful, she whispered. The threat revealed. On the bridge, Lieutenant Davis gestured to the main holoscreen. Message intercepted on open Syndicate frequencies, sir. They're transmitting across multiple systems. Play it, Jack ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing the angular, insect-like face of Overlord Kahless. His red eyes glowed with malice. To the humans who dare defy us. You believe you've won by destroying the mind engine, but you have only delayed your destruction. The screen shifted to show Sol Prime, Earth's primary orbital station. Massive Syndicate warships surrounded it. Surrender the Thalkiri, Kahless continued, or we will turn Earth's skies to ash. You have 24 hours. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Davis swallowed hard. Sir, they've never threatened Earth directly before. Jack clenched his fists. They're desperate. Without the mind engine, they can't maintain control across the colonies. If they crush Earth, they'll scare everyone back into submission. His gaze shifted toward the medbay corridor. Lyra. Kahless wasn't just after revenge. He needed her to create a new psionic network. Prep the ship, Jack ordered. We're going to Earth. The mission of hope. The journey to Earth took hours of tense silence. Jack sat beside Lyra again. They're after me, she said softly. Yeah, Jack admitted. They want to rebuild the mind engine with your abilities. She nodded weakly. I can't let that happen, but I'm not strong enough to fight Kahless again. Jack squeezed her hand. We'll figure it out. Together. Her eyes glimmered with sadness. Jack, the only way to stop Kahless is to destroy his command ship. Its core crystal is like the mind engine's heart. I can overload it. Jack frowned. That'll kill him, right? Yes, but the power surge. She hesitated. It will drain me completely. I might not survive. Jack's heart lurched. No, there's gotta be another way. Liara gave a sad smile. The galaxy is free because I broke the first crystal. I need to break this one too. Jack shook his head. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Freedom is worth sacrifice, she said softly. Isn't that what humans always say? Jack had no words. He just held her hand, hating the choice ahead. The battle for Earth. The Dauntless dropped out of warp near Earth. The Syndicate fleet loomed over the blue planet like a swarm of monstrous locusts. Earth's defense stations fired desperately, but the Syndicate's shields held strong. Enemy flagship identified, Davis reported. The Obsidian Warden. Kalis is on board. Targeted, Jack ordered. We hit that ship, we end this. The Dauntless roared into battle. Plasma cannons fired, striking enemy cruisers. Drones swarmed in response, peppering the ship with plasma bolts. Shields at 60%. Davis shouted. Hold steady, Jack commanded. Liara stood at the bridge entrance, leaning on the doorway for support. You shouldn't be here, Jack said. I have to be, she replied. The Obsidian Warden's main cannon fired. A beam of crimson light lanced through Earth's atmosphere, striking the coastal city. Firestorms erupted below. Liara gasped. The mines, the screams. They're burning entire cities to show their power. Jack's jaw tightened. We end this now. The final gambit. The Dauntless dove toward the Obsidian Warden, weaving through defensive fire. Syndicate drones swarmed around them. Liara staggered to the console, eyes glowing faintly. She reached out with her mind. The drones faltered, colliding with each other as she scrambled their psionic commands. We're clear, Davis shouted, locking onto the enemy's core. Jack launched torpedoes. The warheads struck the Warden's hull, blasting a breach. Take us in, Jack ordered. The Dauntless docked onto the Syndicate warship's exposed section. Jack and Liara led a strike team into the corridors. The core chamber. The enemy ship's interior was a nightmare of black metal and humming energy conduits. The core chamber pulsed with psionic energy, Kalis's power source. As they entered the chamber, Kalis stepped from the shadows. You've come to die, he said, voice sharp as broken glass. Jack raised his rifle. No, we came to end you. Kalis raised a clawed hand. Jack flew backward, crashing into a wall. Liara cried out, stepping forward. Little Valkyrie, Kalis sneered. You're weak. Broken. Liara met his gaze. You're wrong. I'm free. Her eyes flared bright blue. The core crystal shook. Kalis lunged, slamming her against the wall. No more tricks. I will take your mind. Liara screamed in pain. Jack staggered to his feet, grabbed his pistol, and fired. The shot hit Kalis's shoulder, making him stumble. Now, Liara, Jack shouted. She turned to the core, placing her hands against the crystal. Energy crackled. The core screamed. Kalis roared, charging her. Jack tackled him. They grappled as Liara poured her energy into the crystal. Liara, stop, Jack yelled. You'll die. She looked back, tears in her glowing eyes. Thank you, Jack, for believing in me. Light exploded from the crystal. Kalis shrieked as the energy disintegrated his body. Liara's eyes turned white. Her body shook violently as the crystal shattered. Jack felt the shockwave hurl him across the chamber. Darkness swallowed him. Aftermath. Jack woke to soft beeping sounds. He was in the Dauntless's medbay. Easy, Commander, Davis said beside him. Jack sat up, heart pounding. Liara. Davis's expression turned grim. We found her in the core chamber. No heartbeat, but her body still. Strange. Like it's caught between life and energy. Jack limped to her bedside. Liara lay still, her silver skin dim, her breathing gone. But faint blue sparks flickered around her fingertips. Jack sank into the chair, took her hand, and whispered, You broke their chains, Liara. You saved us all. A single blue spark danced across her palm, then faded. Jack held her hand tighter. Outside the window, Earth's skies were clear once more. The syndicate was broken, but the price of freedom had never felt so heavy. The awakening. The skies above Earth shimmered with the wreckage of syndicate warships. Burning fragments drifted like falling stars, marking the end of a dark era. Across the world, cities paused their struggles to witness the impossible. The alien armada defeated, the invincible syndicate broken. But inside the medbay of the Dauntless, the victory felt hollow. Commander Jack Riker sat beside Lyra's still body. Her skin, once radiant silver, now looked dull like cold metal left in the rain. Her chest did not rise, her heart did not beat. Only faint blue sparks occasionally crackled along her fingertips, like a distant storm struggling to ignite. He held her lifeless hand in his heart aching with helplessness. "You did it, Lyra," he whispered. "You broke their chains. You saved us. Now come back. Please, come back." The medbay hummed softly. The monitors displayed a flat line. The medical team had tried everything: cardiostomes, neural reactivation, even psionic stabilizers. Nothing worked. Lyra was gone. Jack bowed his head. Outside, the world celebrated. Inside, he mourned. The cost of freedom. The next few days passed in a blur. Jack moved like a ghost through the ship, overseeing repairs, speaking to command staff, sending reports to Earth's Defense Council. Everywhere, people cheered the end of the Syndicate's reign. The mind engine was destroyed. The enslaved billions were free. But the cost was etched into Jack's soul. Lyra had died saving them. His crew saw the pain in his eyes but said nothing. They understood. Lyra had become more than just an alien guest. She had become a symbol of hope, a being who shattered the chains of an empire. And for Jack, she had become more than that. She had become someone who reminded him that hope wasn't just an idea, it was something people fought for together. The mystery of the energy field. A week later, Davis approached him in the command center, holding a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this," Davis said. Jack took the tablet. It showed sensor data from the medbay. "These are energy readings from Lyra's body," Davis explained. "The spike started 3 days ago. Low-level psionic energy keeps building up around her cells." Jack's heart skipped. "She's dead, Davis. We checked a dozen times." "I know, sir. Medically, she has no heartbeat, no brain waves. But the energy, it's growing. Like her body isn't following normal biological rules anymore." "She's Valkyrie," Jack said, voice low. "They're different." Davis gave a cautious nod. "We've never seen anything like this before. Whatever destroyed the Syndicate's core crystal, it did something to her." Jack stared at the data. The energy signature was familiar. The same blue psionic waves Lyra once used to shatter chains. "Run a full scan," Jack ordered. "Look for patterns. The psionic pulse." Hours later, Davis called Jack back to the medbay. "We found something," Davis said, pointing to the holoscreen. "Look here." The screen showed a time-lapse of the psionic energy around Lyra's body. The field pulsed irregularly at first, random and weak. But then the waves began forming patterns, like a heartbeat. Jack leaned closer. "That pattern. It's like the mind engine's psionic signature." "Exactly," Davis said. "But not the controlling part. This signal. It's defensive. Like she's trying to rebuild herself." Jack's eyes narrowed. "She's fighting to come back." He turned to Dr. Hughes. "If she's rebuilding herself, can we help her?" Hughes hesitated. "We can try. But we'd be stepping into unknown territory. Valkyrie physiology and psionic biology are uncharted. We could lose her for good." Jack looked through the glass at Lyra's still form. "I won't let her go without a fight," he said. The psionic rebirth. The medbay was cleared for the procedure. They placed Lyra in a psionic resonance chamber, a device originally designed to monitor telepathic signals. Now, It would become her lifeline. Hughes adjusted the controls. The plan is to amplify the natural psionic waves building in her cells. If we push too hard, her body could collapse. If we don't push enough, the energy will fade. Start slow, Jack said. The chamber hummed to life. Blue energy crackled around Lyra's body, dancing like lightning on water. The monitors showed faint activity. The psionic waves pulsed faster. Her brain activity. Hughes exclaimed. It's spiking. Lyra's body arched slightly. The blue energy surged through her veins, traveling along her limbs, illuminating the veins beneath her silver skin. Her eyes snapped open. They glowed an intense, brilliant blue. The chamber powered down. The hum ceased. The monitors stabilized. Lyra gasped, drawing her first breath in days. Jack rushed to her side. Lyra, he whispered. Her eyes blinked slowly, adjusting to the light. She focused on him and gave a faint smile. Jack, you called me back. He gripped her hand. Yeah, I wasn't ready to let you go. Tears filled her eyes. I felt the darkness, the silence, but I heard your voice. You held on. Jack nodded, unable to speak. The psionic warning. Lyra's recovery was slow. Her strength returned gradually, but her psionic powers seemed changed. The blue energy surrounding her was more intense, more refined. Days later, as she sat beside the observation window, she called Jack over. I feel something, she said, eyes troubled. Out there. Jack followed her gaze to the distant stars. The syndicate. Lyra shook her head. No, something else. Bigger, darker. When I broke the mind engine, I felt another presence. Watching. Waiting. Jack's shoulders tensed. You think someone, or something, was behind the syndicate. Lyra's gaze didn't waver. Yes, the syndicate was powerful, but it wasn't alone. It served a greater force, and now that we've broken their chains, that force knows about us. Jack stared at the stars, dread curling in his gut. The galaxy was vast. Humanity had just begun to understand its dangers. Lyra squeezed his hand. They're coming, Jack, and they won't stop until every mind, every free soul is theirs. The message from the void. 2 days later, Earth's deep space listening posts picked up an unknown signal. It was not syndicate code. It was older, more complex. The transmission repeated one phrase in dozens of languages. The architects of Dominion are awake. Prepare for submission. Jack sat in the command chair of the Dauntless, the weight of those words pressing on his shoulders. Lyra stood beside him. The blue glow in her eyes intensified. They're here, she said softly. Jack exhaled slowly. Then we fight. Just like before. Together. Lyra squeezed his hand, her expression determined. Together. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, holding secrets darker than anyone imagined. The syndicate was defeated. But the true war was only beginning. The new dawn. The stars hung like silent witnesses as the Dauntless glided through the void. The syndicate was broken. Earth's skies were clear, and billions of sentient minds were free from the chains of the mind engine. But Commander Jack Riker felt no relief. Victory had come with a shadow, a whisper of something darker beyond the syndicate's tyranny. The architects of Dominion are awake. Prepare for submission. That message, broadcast across dozens of systems, haunted him. A new enemy, vast and unknown, was stirring. In the observation lounge, Jack stood beside Lyra, watching the stars. She had recovered faster than anyone expected, but something had changed in her. Her powers were stronger, sharper, like a fire that had been tempered in the forge of death itself. You feel it, don't you? Jack asked without looking at her. Lyra nodded. The architects are coming. They felt the mind engine break. It was like a beacon calling them back. Jack's jaw tightened. Who are they? Lyra's glowing eyes reflected the stars. Long before the Syndicate ruled, the architects controlled the galaxy. They didn't conquer with fleets or weapons. They enslaved minds. Entire civilizations obeyed their will, not knowing they were being controlled. And the Syndicate? Jack asked. They were their servants, Lyra said softly, caretakers of the architects' control systems. The mind engine was one of many. When we destroyed it, we shattered a piece of the architect's hold on reality. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. So we didn't just free billions. We rang the doorbell of an ancient nightmare. Lyra gave a grim smile. Yes, and now the architects want their power back. The architects' signal. The Dauntless cruised through deep space, scanning for any sign of architect activity. Earth and its colonies were reinforcing defenses, but fear spread like wildfire across the human worlds. The Syndicate was familiar. The architects were unknown. And the unknown terrified even the bravest hearts. Lieutenant Davis called from the comm station. Commander, we're picking up a signal. Faint. Direction. Deep rift zone. That region's been silent for centuries, Jack said, stepping forward. Put it on speakers. The bridge filled with a low rhythmic tone, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. The frequency shifted, forming words. Mindless flesh, blind travelers. The architect's return. Submit or perish. The crew shifted uneasily. Trace it, Jack ordered. Davis worked the controls. It's coming from Grid 7X2. Dead space near the abandoned Typhon system. Jack exchanged a look with Lyra. That's Syndicate territory. Was Syndicate territory, she corrected. Now it's Architect territory. The Ghost Fleet. The Dauntless entered the Typhon system cautiously. The star here was dim and cold, casting pale, lifeless light over the planets. As they approached Typhon IV, the scanners lit up with dozens of metallic signatures. Commander, Davis said, voice tight, we've got ships. Hundreds of them. The holo display showed a massive fleet orbiting the planet. The ships were sleek, black, and unlike anything they'd seen before. They hovered in perfect, motionless formation. Lyra touched her temple. I feel them, like empty shells waiting for commands. Architect drones? Jack asked. She nodded. They're dormant, for now, but the core intelligence is waking up. The main screen crackled. A face appeared, a featureless, metallic mask with no mouth, no eyes, only a smooth reflective surface. The voice was cold and mechanical. You are anomalies, minds that resist control. This is inefficient. Jack's jaw clenched. We're free, and we like it that way. Freedom is disorder. Disorder breeds chaos. The architects bring order. Lyra stepped forward. We broke your mind engine. We know how to fight you. The mask tilted slightly. The mind engine was one node. Countless others remain. We will reclaim what is ours. The Valkyrie will lead the way. The image vanished. Target lock. Davis shouted. They're powering weapons. The Battle of Typhon. The architect fleet came to life. Hundreds of ships moved in eerie unison, flowing like a single organism. Blue psionic beams lanced through space, forcing the Dauntless to evade. Return fire, Jack ordered. The ship's plasma cannons blazed, striking the enemy ships. The architect's hulls absorbed the energy, glowing faintly but taking no damage. Lyra closed her eyes. They're shielding themselves with a psionic barrier. It's like the mind engine, but stronger. Can you break it? Jack asked. I can try, she said, voice strained. She reached out with her mind. The energy field shimmered as she probed for weaknesses. The architect ships responded. Psionic pressure flooded the ship like invisible hands pressing against every brain. The crew screamed, clutching their heads. Jack's vision blurred, his mind filled with whispers. Sleep. Obey. Submit. Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing like twin suns. No, she shouted. The pressure vanished. The architect's ships faltered for a second. "Fire everything we've got," Jack roared. The Dauntless unleashed a full barrage. The plasma bolts pierced the weakened barrier, tearing through the architect fleet. Explosions blossomed in the void as dozens of ships disintegrated. The enemy fleet regrouped. Liara staggered. "There? Too many. I can't hold them all." Jack's mind raced. The architects were learning fast. They'd adapt and overwhelm them soon. Then he saw it, the largest ship at the center of the formation, a black behemoth with tendrils of energy stretching toward the fleet. The command ship, the architect's core mind. "Lyra," Jack said, gripping her shoulders. "Can you hit their command ship directly? Cut the hive link like you did with the Syndicate." Maybe. But I'd have to get close. And it will take everything I have." Jack's chest tightened. "I can't ask you to do that." "You don't have to ask," she said, eyes resolute. "This is why I came back." He gave a sharp nod. "Then let's finish this." The final strike. The Dauntless dived toward the architect command ship. Enemy fire wraithed the hull. Shields collapsed. "Ramming speed," Jack ordered. The ship collided with the command ship's hull with a shuddering crash. Jack and Lyra rushed to the cargo bay. The hull breach gave them direct access to the enemy interior. Inside, the architect ship pulsed like a living brain. Tendrils of blue energy snaked along the walls. At the center, a massive crystalline structure throbbed like a heart. Lyra approached it. "This is their central core. If I overload it, their fleet collapses." The tendrils shifted. A towering figure emerged, a humanoid made of shimmering black metal. Its face was smooth, blank. "You cannot resist," it said. Jack fired his rifle. The energy bolts passed through the figure without effect. Lyra placed her hands on the core. The crystal flared. The architect's presence surged into their minds. "Chaos is weakness. Obey." Jack dropped to one knee, teeth gritted. Lyra screamed, pushing back against the psionic force. The core crackled. The architect form advanced. Jack, barely conscious, raised his weapon again. "Stay away from her," he growled. The architect paused, curious. "Futile. You are nothing." Jack's fingers squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt struck a small, glowing conduit behind the figure. The architect's form shimmered and flickered. Lyra seized the opening. She poured her remaining strength into the core. The crystal splintered. Energy exploded outward in waves. The architect's form convulsed and shattered into mist. The tendrils recoiled. The entire ship trembled. "Lyra," Jack shouted. She stood motionless, eyes glowing pure white. The energy consumed her. Jack rushed forward, pulling her away as the core collapsed. They sprinted to the Dauntless. The ship tore away from the command vessel as the enemy fleet convulsed and collapsed. One by one, the architect ships disintegrated. The new dawn. Hours later, Jack sat by Lyra's side in the medbay. Her skin was dull, her breath shallow. Her eyes opened slowly. "Did we win?" she whispered. He smiled through tears. "Yeah, you shattered them. The architect fleet is gone." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Good. Freedom. Lives another day." Outside the window, Earth rose against the stars. The galaxy was free. But Jack knew this was just the beginning. The architects had awakened, and humanity would have to stand strong or risk losing everything. Together, he and Lyra would be there when the next battle came. Because humanity, after all, was stubborn, and no chains could hold them forever.